Thank you, Mrs. Vess. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. And can I thank the honourable member for Bolton South and Walkden for securing this debate. I think we've heard unanimity across the House, a real feeling of injustice at the rising charges that we see at almost every airport that has been mentioned here today. I think it should be a concern to all of us and indeed to our constituents. And I think many of us do receive letters and correspondence about this issue. Particularly, I especially do, given my constituency's proximity to both Heathrow and to Gatwick. I want to just focus my comments through three particular themes today, two of which are directly related to this and one of which is just a slight shoehorning of another issue that I feel very passionately about, but I think does correspond to the topic of today's debate. The first, as we have already heard, is about the rising cost of those charges, particularly for people who have no realistic alternative to get to an airport. Secondly, the transparency and fairness of the payment processes themselves. And thirdly, it's about the wider enforcement and security consequences of poorly designed payment systems involving ANPR and the insecurities that there are in our ANPR system. As I mentioned, I'm the Member of Parliament for Surrey Heath. Camberley, our main market town, is 19 miles from Heathrow Airport. We're about 45 miles away from Gatwick. But in both of those cases, for both of those airports, we have incredibly poor public transport systems to take us to those airports. So people rely, therefore, on driving and therefore also incurring the £10 charge, for example, at Gatwick, that my honourable friend mentioned before. These are not lifestyle choices. These are structural necessities driven by poor public transport infrastructure as you come out of central London towards the shires of the likes of Surrey. I absolutely welcome the introduction of a recent and fantastic new express bus from some of the villages in my constituency to Heathrow, but they only connect 3 of the communities in my constituency to Heathrow. So lots of other people are left beyond that system. Driving is realistically, for those people, the only option that they have. And of course, those decisions, that lack of choice, disproportionately affects the disabled, people with young children, older people, and those travelling, of course, to or from regional airports where public transport systems are even more limited than they are in my area. And of course that all reflects a wider national picture. The Business Travel Association has been clear that public transport is frequently not a viable substitute for accessing airports, and pricing people out of curbside drop-off does not make it suddenly accessible. And that leads me to my second point, and that's about the fairness, the justice of the payment systems themselves. The honourable member for Oldham South? West, forgive me, made, I think, an excellent series of points. And I have to say, I have also been the victim of exactly the situations that he has referred to. I have driven around the loopway around Heathrow Airport. I have incurred the charge that he mentioned purely by accidentally turning the wrong way. I appealed to get my money back. I didn't get it. And then I had to go and park in the multi-storey car park as well. I felt doubly aggrieved. But the problem is that nobody ever got back to me when I called the number. And the problem is that the system seems to be baking in penalties as a form of revenue raising. And I don't know if that's necessarily entirely fair, but that's the way that people feel. That is the perception. And why do people feel that? Because the companies involved are not making it straightforward. They're not issuing the clear signage. They're not making it easy to make those payments. I think the honourable member who has raised this debate talked about some of the scenarios in which people go to airports late at night, early in the morning, very often doing multiple other things during the course of the day. It's very easy to forget the act of payment. And this ultimately leads me to my third point, and that's about ANPR. Because of the increasingly punitive nature of some of the costs, we are seeing a huge rise in the use of ghost plates and number plate cloning. I have constituents who have received fines from both Gatwick and Heathrow Airport because their number plates have been cloned, apparently perhaps by taxicab companies who are seeking to avoid the repeated application of those charges at airports. If the system is driving increased criminality to involve the fine, then we have a problem that needs to be explained because the cost and the inconvenience is falling back on constituents. Not something that people perhaps had thought of, and I think it's the first time it's been made today, but I think it's a really important issue. So even though I know that the previous aviation minister said that there was no intention to review this process, I would urge the government to look at this again. There needs to be proper, fair payment systems. There needs to be a cap on how much airports are allowed to charge, because I don't want to have any more constituents writing to me about it.
Yeah.